When a disciplined single father meets an unpredictable billionaire next door, their clash ignites a battle between order and chaos that threatens everything they've built. But when disaster strikes, he'll have to choose between protecting his reputation and saving her life. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. Ethan Cole's phone buzzed at 6:47 a.m., 13 minutes before his alarm was set to go off. He stared at the ceiling of his bedroom, jaw tight, resisting the urge to check it. Discipline meant routine. Routine meant control. Control meant his daughter Mia got to school on time, his business stayed afloat, and the bills got paid without him lying awake at night doing math in his head. The phone buzzed again. He grabbed it. Two texts from Gerald Hopkins, the HOA president, which was never a good sign at this hour. Need to speak with you. New neighbor situation. Call me when you're up. Ethan let his head fall back against the pillow. New neighbor. He'd seen the moving trucks 3 days ago unloading furniture into the house next door, the one that had sat empty for 8 months after the Hendersons retired to Florida. He hadn't paid much attention beyond noting that someone had finally bought the place. The property had good bones, decent lot size, and a mature oak in the backyard that needed attention. He'd planned to introduce himself eventually. That was the neighborly thing to do. Apparently, Gerald had other plans. Ethan rolled out of bed, pulled on his running clothes, and headed downstairs. The house was still quiet. Mia wouldn't be up for another hour. He started the coffee maker, stretched his calves against the kitchen counter, and hit Gerald's number. Ethan, thanks for calling back. Gerald's voice had that pinch quality it got when he was about to make someone's day worse. We've got a problem with the new resident at 42 Maple. That's next door to me. I'm aware, which is why I'm calling you first. Papers rustled on Gerald's end. Aurora Vale moved in Tuesday. Single occupant. Purchased the property outright. No mortgage. Okay. She's already racked up 3 violations. Trash bins left out past collection day. Non-approved exterior paint color on the shutters, and the yard is a disaster. She's planted something in the front bed that's not on the approved species list. Ethan pinched the bridge of his nose. The HOA had rules. He got that. Hell, he'd voted for half of them. They kept property values stable, maintained the neighborhood aesthetic, prevented the place from turning into a circus. But Gerald treated the rulebook like scripture, and Ethan had learned the hard way that you didn't want to be on his bad side. You want me to talk to her? I want you to assess the situation professionally. You're a landscape architect. If her yard's in violation, I need documentation. Photos, species identification, the works. I'm filing a formal complaint by end of week. Gerald, she just moved in, and she's already making a mess. Rules apply to everyone, Ethan, even people with money. The call ended before Ethan could respond. He stood in his kitchen, coffee mug halfway to his mouth, and wondered what kind of person bought a house in Riverside Estates and immediately started pissing off the HOA. He found out 4 hours later. Mia was at school. Ethan had finished a client meeting and returned home to grab his site equipment for an afternoon job. He was loading his truck when he heard it. Music, loud music, the kind that rattled windows and made your teeth ache. It was coming from next door. Ethan walked across his lawn to the property line and stopped. The yard at 42 Maple looked like a tornado had touched down and decided to stay a while. The grass was overgrown in patches and dead in others. Garden beds were choked with weeds. Someone had started digging holes near the fence and apparently lost interest halfway through. A rusted wheelbarrow sat overturned by the driveway, and in the middle of this chaos, a woman stood with her back to him, wielding a sledgehammer against a concrete garden border. She was tall, athletic build, wearing paint-splattered overalls and a tank top that showed tanned, muscular arms. Dark hair was piled on top of her head in a messy knot. She swung the sledgehammer with surprising force, and chunks of concrete exploded across the lawn. The music was coming from a speaker the size of a microwave sitting on the front porch. "Excuse me," Ethan called out. She didn't hear him, or chose not to. Another swing, more concrete shrapnel. "Excuse me," louder this time. She turned, sledgehammer still in hand, and Ethan got his first good look at Aurora Vale. She was younger than he expected, maybe 30, though it was hard to tell with the smudge of dirt across her cheek. Sharp features, high cheekbones, and eyes that pinned him in place with an intensity that felt almost physical. She wasn't beautiful in the conventional sense. She was striking. The kind of face that made you look twice, then a third time just to figure out what you were seeing. "Can I help you?" she asked, not bothering to lower the music. "I'm Ethan Cole. I live next door." He gestured toward his house. "Welcome to the neighborhood." "Thanks." She turned back to the concrete. "Could you maybe turn the music down a little? It's 11 in the morning. I'm aware of what time it is." She faced him again, leaning on the sledgehammer like a cane. "You got a problem with my music or with me?" "I don't know you well enough to have a problem with you." "Then it's just the music. It's loud. It's my property." "There are noise ordinances." Aurora smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "Let me guess. You're here on behalf of the HOA. I'm here as your neighbor." "Right." She set the sledgehammer down and walked toward him, stopping a few feet away. Up close, she was taller than he'd thought, maybe 5'10". She smelled like sweat and earth and something else he couldn't place. Something expensive, out of place in a yard that looked like a junkyard. "You know what's funny? I've been here 72 hours, and I've already gotten 2 letters from the HOA. 2. The ink's barely dry on my deed, and someone's measuring my grass with a ruler. The neighborhood has standards. The neighborhood has a stick up its ass." Ethan felt his jaw tighten. "Look, I don't make the rules, but you follow them religiously. I can tell." She crossed her arms. "Let me guess. You mow your lawn on the same day every week, edge the sidewalk, probably alphabetize your spice rack too. What's wrong with keeping things organized? Nothing, if you're a robot. And what's your philosophy? Total chaos?" "Freedom," Aurora said. "I paid $3.2 million for this house. I'll do whatever the hell I want with it." $3.2 million. Ethan felt something cold settle in his stomach. The Hendersons had listed at 2.8. She'd overpaid by 400,000, which meant either she was terrible at negotiating or money meant nothing to her. "Freedom doesn't mean ignoring your neighbors," he said, "and being a good neighbor doesn't mean harassing someone before they've unpacked their dishes." She picked up the sledgehammer again. "If the HOA has a problem, they can send me another letter. I've got a lawyer who gets paid to read those." "You're going to need him," Ethan muttered. "What was that?" He met her eyes. "I said you're going to need him. Gerald Hopkins doesn't mess around. You keep this up, he'll fine you into bankruptcy." Aurora laughed, a sharp, genuine sound that caught him off guard. "Honey, Gerald Hopkins couldn't fine me into skipping lunch. But thanks for the warning." She hefted the sledgehammer. "Now, if you don't mind, I've got work to do. Your oak tree is dying." That stopped her. "What?" Ethan pointed toward the backyard. "The oak. Big one by the fence. It's got a split in the main trunk, probably from that storm we had last spring. If you don't get it addressed, it's going to come down, probably on your house." Aurora stared at him, expression unreadable. "You're serious?" "I'm a landscape architect. It's kind of my job to notice these things. And you're telling me this because I'm not a complete asshole, despite what you apparently think." Ethan turned to leave. "Get someone to look at it, soon." He made it halfway across his lawn before she called out, "Hey, Cole." He turned. "Thanks for the tree thing." He nodded, not trusting himself to say anything else, and went back to his truck. Inside his cab, engine running, Ethan sat for a moment and tried to shake off the encounter. Aurora Vale was exactly the kind of person he avoided. Chaotic, confrontational, allergic to structure. She was going to be a nightmare neighbor. Gerald would escalate things. She'd fight back, and Ethan would be stuck in the middle of a war he wanted no part of. His phone buzzed, text from his ex-wife, Monica. Mia forgot her science project folder. "Can you drop it by the school?" "No, please." "No, thank you." "Just an order, same as always." Ethan texted back a thumbs up and headed inside to find the folder. The next 3 days passed in tense silence. Aurora's music played every morning from 10 to noon, always just under the volume that would constitute a legal complaint. Ethan saw her coming and going at odd hours. Midnight grocery runs, 3 a.m. returns in a sleek black Tesla that probably cost more than his truck and his mortgage combined. She waved once. He nodded back. They didn't speak. Mia noticed, of course. His daughter noticed everything. Who's the lady next door? She asked over dinner Thursday night. She was 8, gap-toothed, and too smart for her own good. New neighbor. Her name's Aurora. She plays loud music. I know. Is she nice? Ethan thought about that. I don't know yet. She has cool hair. It's really long. Eat your broccoli. Mia made a face but obeyed. Can I meet her? Maybe later. You always say that when you mean no. I mean maybe. Dad. He looked at his daughter, her mother's eyes, his stubborn chin, and felt the familiar weight of single parenthood settle across his shoulders. Every decision mattered. Every person who came into their lives was a potential risk. Monica had taught him that lesson the hard way when she'd walked out 2 years ago, leaving him with a 6-year-old and a half-finished mortgage. He couldn't afford chaos, not in his work, not in his home, and definitely not next door. We'll see, he said finally. Mia rolled her eyes, but she dropped it. Friday afternoon, Ethan was in his backyard trimming the hedge that ran along the property line when he heard voices. Raised voices. He set down the trimmer and listened. Don't care what your policy is. That was Aurora, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. I paid for a delivery window of 12 to 4. It's 3:30. You're still within that window. A man's voice, muffled, defensive. That's not my problem. Your truck broke down? Send another one. I've got a crew scheduled to install this tonight. More muffled response. Fine. Refund the delivery fee and the materials cost. Full refund. I'll find someone else. Silence. Then the sound of a truck door slamming, an engine starting, and tires on gravel. Ethan heard footsteps approaching the fence. He picked up the trimmer and pretended to be absorbed in his work. They teach you how to eavesdrop in landscape architecture school, or is that a natural talent? He turned. Aurora was standing on her side of the fence, arms crossed, looking like she'd just gone 10 rounds with the world and landed a few good punches. Hard not to hear when you're yelling. I wasn't yelling. I was projecting. She leaned against the fence post. Delivery company screwed me. 40 bags of topsoil, and they couldn't be bothered to finish the route. What do you need topsoil for? Raised beds. I'm putting in a vegetable garden. Ethan blinked. You're doing that yourself? Why wouldn't I? Most people hire someone. I'm not most people. She studied him. You think I can't handle manual labor because I've got money? I didn't say that. You were thinking it. She was right, and that irritated him. Where are you putting these beds? South side. Gets full sun most of the day. Gonna need more than topsoil. Your drainage is terrible over there. Water pools near the foundation. Aurora frowned. How do you know that? I can see it from here. The ground's saturated. You put raised beds on top of that, your plants will drown every time it rains. She was quiet for a moment. Then, what would you do? French drain. Redirect the water away from the house. Then amend the soil before you build the beds. How much would that cost? Couple thousand. Maybe 3 if you want it done right. Aurora laughed, but there was no humor in it. Everyone in this neighborhood thinks I'm made of money. Aren't you? Having money and having liquid cash are 2 different things. She pushed off the fence. Thanks for the advice. Wait. She paused. Ethan didn't know why he said what he said next. Maybe it was the exhaustion in her voice. Maybe it was the way she'd thanked him about the tree. Maybe he was just tired of being the guy who always played it safe. I could do it. Do what? The drainage, the beds, the whole setup. He gestured at her yard. You need help. I need work. My business isn't exactly booming right now. Aurora studied him with those sharp eyes. What's your rate? For something like this? Normally around $5,000? I don't have $5,000 to spare right now. Then we work out a trade. What kind of trade? This was where it got complicated. Ethan set down the trimmer and faced her fully. Gerald's going to come after you. Hard. He's already asked me to document violations on your property. And did you? No. Why not? Because I'm not his attack dog. Ethan shoved his hands in his pockets. But that doesn't mean he's going to back off. You're going to need someone who knows how to navigate him, someone who can clean up your yard enough to get him off your back. In exchange for what? This was the part he hadn't fully thought through. My business is struggling. I'm good at what I do, but I'm terrible at marketing. Website's a disaster. No social media presence. Most of my clients are word of mouth, and that well's running dry. He met her eyes. You're a billionaire. You've got connections, resources. Help me rebuild my brand and I'll fix your property. Aurora was silent for a long moment. Then she started laughing, real laughter this time, the kind that came from deep in her chest. You've got balls, Cole. I'll give you that. Is that a yes? It's a maybe. She pulled out her phone. Give me your number. I need to think about it. They exchanged numbers. Aurora's contact photo was a blurred shot of her flipping off the camera. I'll text you tomorrow, she said. Fair enough. She started to walk away, then stopped. Hey, Cole? Yeah? Your daughter, the one who was staring at me from the window earlier. She's cute. Ethan felt his protective instincts kick in immediately. Leave her out of this. Aurora held up her hands. Relax. I was giving you a compliment. You're doing a good job. You don't know anything about me. I know you're raising a kid on your own. I know you work hard. And I know you're scared as hell that something's going to go wrong. She tilted her head. Am I close? Too close. Ethan looked away. Get some sleep, Cole. You look like you haven't had a full night in years. She was gone before he could respond. Aurora texted him at midnight. Deal. Start Monday. Ethan was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling again, wondering if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. He texted back. 7 a.m. Don't be late. I'm never late. I'm strategically delayed. Despite himself, Ethan smiled. Monday morning arrived with rain. Not the gentle spring variety, but the aggressive kind that turned lawns into swamps and made visibility on the highway a gamble. Ethan dropped Mia at school, drove home through the downpour, and found Aurora waiting on her front porch, wearing muddy boots and a rain jacket that looked like it had never seen weather before today. Thought you might cancel, she called out as he parked. I said 7. He climbed out, pulling his hood up. Let's look at the damage. They walked the property together, and with every step, Ethan's assessment grew worse. The drainage issues were more severe than he'd thought. The oak in the back had a split that went deeper into the heartwood than was safe. Several of the foundation plantings were diseased, and someone, probably the previous owners, had installed a decorative rock garden that was now trapping water against the house. How bad? Aurora asked. Bad. This is going to take weeks, not days. I've got time. You're going to need permits for some of this, the tree especially. It's close to the property line. If it comes down wrong, it could take out my fence. So we do it right. They stood in the rain, water streaming off their jackets, and Ethan realized something that unsettled him. Aurora Vale wasn't just rich and reckless. She was committed. When she decided to do something, she didn't half-ass it. That made her dangerous in a different way. I'm going to need access to your yard at weird hours, he said. Early mornings. Some evenings. I've got other clients. Fine. And if Mia's around, she's going to be curious. Kids are like that. Aurora's expression softened slightly. I like kids, long as they don't expect me to babysit. Deal. He pulled out his phone and started taking photos. I'll draw up a plan, you review it, we make adjustments, then I'll file the permits and get started. What do you need from me for the business thing? Information, client list if you've got one, who you know in the area, what kind of work you've had done on properties you own. I'll send you a file tonight. They shook hands. Her grip was firm, calloused, hands that had done real work despite the money. As Ethan walked back to his truck, he heard her call out, Cole! He turned. Thanks for not being a dick about this. Day's still young, he said. She grinned. The file Aurora sent was a nightmare. Not because it was disorganized, quite the opposite. It was meticulous, detailed, and contained enough contact information to keep Ethan busy for 6 months. Property managers across 3 states, contractors who'd worked on her various investments, interior designers, architects, and even a landscape firm in California that charged rates Ethan couldn't comprehend. She owned 14 properties. 14. And she was only 30 years old. He sat at his kitchen table at 1 in the morning, Mia, asleep upstairs, scrolling through the document on his laptop, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Possibility. If even a fraction of these contacts panned out, he could double his business, maybe triple it. The question was whether Aurora would actually follow through. His phone buzzed. "Stop overthinking it. I keep my promises." Ethan typed back. "How did you know I was overthinking?" "Because I'm doing the same thing. Go to sleep." He did, eventually. Tuesday, Ethan started the real work. He brought in a crew to handle the drainage, 2 guys he'd worked with before, reliable and discreet. Aurora watched from the porch for the first hour, then disappeared inside. Around noon, she emerged with sandwiches and cold drinks, which surprised everyone. "You didn't have to do that," Ethan said. "I'm not a monster. You're working on my property. Least I can do is feed you." His crew ate quickly and got back to work. Aurora lingered, standing next to Ethan as he marked out the route for the French drain. "You always been into this?" she asked. "The landscaping thing. Since I was a kid, used to help my grandfather with his garden. He could grow anything." Ethan knelt down, testing the soil. "What about you? You always been into real estate?" "Tech, actually. Made my first million at 26. Sold a startup, took the payout, and put it into property. Diversification. Smart. Lucky," she corrected. "Right place, right time. Right asshole investor who thought he could lowball me." She smiled. "I proved him wrong." "I bet you did." They worked in companionable silence for a while. Then Aurora said, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why'd your wife leave?" Ethan's hands stilled. He looked up at her. "That's a hell of a question." "You don't have to answer," but he found that he wanted to. Maybe because Aurora didn't know him, didn't have preconceived notions. Maybe because exhaustion had finally caught up with him and he was too tired to keep everything locked down. "She didn't want to be a mother," he said quietly. "Not really. She thought she did, but when Mia was born, something shifted. Monica felt trapped. We fought about it for 2 years. Then one day I came home and she was gone. Left a note saying she needed to find herself." "Where is she now?" "Denver. Last I heard. She calls Mia once a month, sends checks for child support. That's about it." Aurora didn't offer empty sympathy, which he appreciated. She just nodded. "That's rough." "We manage." "I can tell." Wednesday, the HOA letter arrived. Ethan found it tucked into his front door, an official notice, stamped and dated, informing him that his association with the ongoing violations at 42 Maple Drive was being documented. If he continued to provide services to the property without ensuring compliance, his own standing with the board could be affected. He read it twice, then crumpled it and threw it in the trash. Then he pulled it out, smoothed it flat, and walked next door. Aurora answered the door in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, hair wet from a shower. "Let me guess, Gerald's being a dick." He handed her the letter. She read it, expression darkening with each line. "They're threatening you." "Yep." "Because you're helping me." "Yep." She looked up. "You want to back out?" "I'd understand." "No?" "Cole?" "I said no." He took the letter back. "Gerald's playing games. He does this every time someone doesn't fall in line immediately. He's trying to scare us into compliance." "Is it working?" "What do you think?" Aurora smiled, and for the first time it reached her eyes. "I think Gerald Hopkins has no idea who he's messing with." "Neither do you, apparently." "Then we're even." They stood in her doorway, rain starting to fall again, and Ethan realized something had shifted. This wasn't just a business arrangement anymore. Somewhere in the mud and the arguments and the late-night texts, they'd become allies. Whether that was a good thing remained to be seen. Thursday night, Ethan got the call he'd been dreading. "Mr. Cole?" The voice was official, clipped. "This is Barbara Chen from the county permit office. We've received a complaint regarding work being performed at 42 Maple Drive." His stomach dropped. "What kind of complaint?" "Allegations of unpermitted construction. We're going to need to send an inspector out to verify compliance." "Everything we're doing is permitted. I filed the paperwork myself." "I'm sure you did. But we still need to inspect." It's protocol when a complaint is filed. Who filed it? I can't disclose that information. But Ethan knew. Gerald. The inspection was scheduled for Monday. That gave him 4 days to make sure every single detail was perfect. He called Aurora. They're coming after us, Vic, he said without preamble. I know, I got the same call. Monday. We need everything buttoned up by then. What do you need? Time, and maybe a miracle. I don't believe in miracles, Aurora said, but I believe in getting things done. I'll be there tomorrow at 6. We'll work through the weekend if we have to. She hung up before he could argue. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday blurred together. Ethan worked 18-hour days with Aurora beside him for most of it. She didn't complain, didn't quit. When his crew knocked off at 6, she stayed. When he worked past midnight under floodlights, she brought coffee and held the measuring tape. Mia came over Saturday afternoon curious about the noise. Aurora sat with her on the porch and taught her about soil pH while Ethan installed the last section of drainage pipe. She's cool, Mia announced later, eating dinner at their kitchen table. She's something, Ethan agreed. I like her. Good. Do you like her? Ethan paused, fork halfway to his mouth. What kind of question is that? A normal one. You're over there all the time. I'm working. You smile more when you're there. Out of the mouths of 8-year-olds. Ethan set down his fork. Aurora's my client, that's all. Okay, Mia said, in that tone that meant she didn't believe him but wasn't going to push. Later, after Mia was asleep, Ethan stood on his back porch and looked at the lights still burning in Aurora's house. His body ached. His hands were raw. He had dirt under his fingernails and a sunburn on the back of his neck, and he felt more alive than he had in years. His phone buzzed. Thank you for everything. He typed back. We're not done yet. I know, but still, thank you. Ethan stared at the screen, then typed, You're welcome. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Get some sleep, Cole. Big day Monday. You too. I never sleep. Liar. Fine. I'll try. Night. Night. Oops. Monday morning, the inspector arrived at 9 sharp. His name was Richard Paulson, and he had the demeanor of a man who'd seen every code violation imaginable and was personally offended by all of them. Ethan walked him through the property, Aurora at his side. Every permit was in order, every measurement exact, every material within code. Paulson checked everything twice, took photos, made notes on a clipboard that seemed designed specifically to make people nervous. Finally, after 2 hours, he straightened. Everything looks good. You'll get the sign-off letter in 5 business days. Relief hit Ethan like a wave. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank whoever did this work. It's solid. Paulson glanced at Aurora. You picked a good contractor. After he left, Ethan and Aurora stood in the driveway, the morning sun finally breaking through the clouds. We did it, she said. Yeah. Gerald's going to be pissed. Yeah. She turned to him. What now? Good question. The immediate crisis was over. The work was done. By all rights, they should go back to being neighbors who nodded politely and kept their distance. But Ethan didn't want that. And judging by the look on Aurora's face, neither did she. Now, he said slowly, you start making those calls, introducing me to your contacts, rebuilding my business. And you? I finished the oak tree. It's still a hazard. Aurora nodded. Deal. They shook hands again, but this time it felt different. Less like a transaction, more like a promise. Coffee? She asked. I've got a fresh pot inside. Yeah, Ethan said. Coffee sounds good. They walked toward her house side by side, and neither of them noticed Gerald Hopkins sitting in his car 3 houses down, watching with narrowed eyes and making notes of his own. The real battle was just beginning. Aurora's coffee was terrible. Not just bad, aggressively terrible. The kind that made Ethan wonder if she'd confused salt and sugar at some point in the process. He drank it anyway, standing in her kitchen while she scrolled through her phone, firing off emails to contacts he'd only dreamed of reaching. Marcus Chen owes me a favor, she muttered, typing rapidly. He's redoing his corporate headquarters in Seattle. Landscaping budget's around 200 grand. I'm telling him you're the only one who can handle it. Ethan nearly choked on the coffee. You can't just... I absolutely can. Marcus is brilliant with tech, but completely useless with people. He'll trust my recommendation. She glanced up. Unless you don't want the job. I want the job. I just don't want you overselling me. I'm not overselling. I've seen your work. You're good. She went back to her phone. You're just terrible at telling people you're good. That's what I'm fixing. Her kitchen was chaos. Boxes still unpacked, dishes in the sink, a stack of mail on the counter that looked like it hadn't been touched in days. But her laptop setup on the dining table was pristine, 3 monitors running spreadsheets and documents that made Ethan's head hurt just looking at them. How do you keep track of all this? He asked. Practice. And a lot of coffee. She paused. Well, what I call coffee, you probably call it battery acid. It's not that bad. You're a terrible liar, Cole. His phone buzzed. A text from Monica. Can you take Mia this weekend? I have plans. It wasn't his weekend, but Monica's plans usually meant she'd already committed to something and was informing him rather than asking. He texted back a thumbs up and pocketed the phone. Problem? Aurora asked. My ex. She wants me to take Mia this weekend. That a problem? No, I'd rather have her with me anyway. Aurora studied him for a moment. You're a good dad. I try. Most people just say they try. You actually do it. She closed her laptop. All right, I've sent out 5 emails. If even 2 of them bite, you'll be booked through fall. Just like that? Just like that. She stood, stretching. That's the thing about having money, Cole. It's not about what you buy. It's about what doors it opens. Right now, I'm opening doors for you. Why? The question came out before Ethan could stop it. Aurora looked at him, really looked at him, and for a moment her usual armor cracked. Because I know what it's like to work your ass off and have people overlook you. And because you didn't have to help me, but you did. She picked up his empty mug. Also because Gerald Hopkins is a petty dictator, and I enjoy making his life difficult. Ethan laughed despite himself. That's the real reason, isn't it? Maybe. She rinsed the mug. You sticking around for the tree work? Or you got other clients today? I've got a consultation at 2, small residential job. Go. I'll be here when you're ready to deal with the oak. He left feeling lighter than he had in months. The consultation went well. A young couple wanting to redesign their backyard for their upcoming wedding. Simple job, good money, the kind of work Ethan could do in his sleep. But the whole time, he kept thinking about Aurora's kitchen, her chaotic efficiency, the way she'd casually dropped his name to people who wouldn't have given him a second glance otherwise. When he got home, Mia was at the kitchen table doing homework, and his phone had 3 missed calls from numbers he didn't recognize. He called the first one back. Ethan Cole? This is Jennifer Wu. Aurora Vale said you might be able to help with a project I'm working on. By the time he hung up 20 minutes later, he had a meeting scheduled for Thursday and a potential contract worth $30,000. The second call was similar. The third wanted to fly him to Austin to look at a commercial property. Ethan sat in his truck, staring at his phone, trying to process what had just happened. In one afternoon, Aurora had done what he'd been trying to do for 2 years. He texted her. What did you tell these people? The truth. That you're talented and undervalued. Why? I just got 3 callbacks. One wants to fly me to Texas. Good. You're going, right? I have Mia, so bring her. Make it a weekend trip. She'll love it. Ethan thought about that. Monica would probably say yes. She usually did when it meant less responsibility for her. And Mia had never been to Austin. Maybe. Not maybe. Yes. Stop overthinking. You don't know me well enough to know I overthink. Cole, I've known you 2 weeks, and I've watched you measure the same piece of drainage pipe 4 times. You overthink everything. He couldn't argue with that. That evening, he worked on the oak tree. It was delicate work, the kind that required precision and patience. One wrong cut, and the whole thing could come down in the wrong direction. Aurora watched from a safe distance, occasionally handing him tools when he asked. How'd you learn all this? She asked. Trial and error, a lot of research. My grandfather taught me the basics, but he was old school. I had to modernize the techniques. Ever screw up? Once. Dropped a branch on a client's shed. Cost me $3,000 to replace it. Ouch. Yeah, learned real quick to triple check everything. The sun was setting by the time he finished securing the damaged section. It wasn't a permanent fix. The tree would need more extensive work in the spring, but it was stable for now. That should hold through winter, he said, climbing down from the ladder. Aurora handed him a water bottle. What do I owe you? Nothing. It's part of the deal. The deal was for the yard work. This is extra. Then consider it a bonus for the clients you just sent my way. She didn't argue, which surprised him. Instead, she said, You want to stay for dinner? Ethan hesitated. I should get back, Mia. Bring her over. I'll order pizza. She can teach me more about soil pH. It was a bad idea. Ethan knew it was a bad idea. Getting Mia more involved with Aurora meant complicating things, blurring lines that should stay clear. But Mia liked Aurora, and honestly, so did he. Pepperoni, he said. She won't eat anything else. Aurora grinned. Done. 40 minutes later, they were sitting in Aurora's living room, still half unpacked, furniture arranged in a way that suggested she'd moved it once and never bothered adjusting. Mia sat on the floor, pizza slice in hand, telling Aurora about her science project on plant growth. So if you add too much fertilizer, the plants die? Aurora asked. Yeah, it burns the roots. Miss Peterson said it's like giving them too much sugar. Huh? I did not know that. Mia beamed. Dad taught me. He knows everything about plants. I don't know everything, Ethan said. You know a lot, Mia insisted. Then to Aurora, he can tell you what kind of tree it is just by looking at the leaves. That's actually pretty impressive, Aurora admitted. It's pattern recognition, Ethan said, uncomfortable with the attention. Nothing special. He's being modest, Mia said. Dad's always modest. Aurora caught his eye and smiled. I'm learning that. After dinner, Mia fell asleep on Aurora's couch watching a nature documentary. Ethan carried her home, tucked her into bed, and returned to help Aurora clean up. She's great, Aurora said, loading paper plates into the trash. You're raising her right. I'm trying. Some days I have no idea what I'm doing. Nobody does. That's the secret they don't tell you. They worked in comfortable silence for a while. Then Aurora said, Can I ask you something? Sure. Why landscape architecture? I mean, I get the family connection, but why make it your career? Ethan thought about how to answer that. Control, I guess. Everything in life is chaotic and unpredictable. But with landscape work, you can plan things, design them, make them grow the way you want. There's something satisfying about that. Except nothing grows exactly the way you plan. No, but you can get close. Aurora leaned against the counter. I think that's what I like about real estate. Buying something broken and fixing it. Turning it into something better than it was. Is that what you're doing here? Fixing something broken? Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired of living in places that feel temporary. She looked around the messy kitchen. I've owned 14 properties, but I've never really had a home. Not since I was a kid. What happened? Foster care. Bounced around until I aged out at 18. Made my first money doing freelance coding. Built it from there. She said it matter-of-factly, no self-pity. Money doesn't fix everything, but it gives you options. That's more than I had growing up. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. Every assumption he'd made about Aurora, that she was reckless, entitled, careless, was crumbling. She wasn't any of those things. She was someone who'd fought for everything she had and refused to apologize for it. I'm sorry, he said finally. That's rough. It made me who I am. She pushed off the counter. Anyway, enough heavy conversation. You should get home. Get some sleep. Yeah. He headed for the door, then stopped. Aurora? Yeah? Thanks for helping with the business stuff. You didn't have to go that hard. I keep my promises, Cole. Remember that. He did. Wednesday morning, Gerald Hopkins showed up at Ethan's door at 7:15, which meant whatever was coming was going to be unpleasant. We need to talk, Gerald said without preamble. Ethan stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind him. About? Your involvement with Ms. Vale. The board's concerned. The inspection cleared everything. We're in compliance. That's not what I mean. Gerald pulled out his phone, showed Ethan a photo. It was from Monday night, Aurora and Ethan in her driveway after the inspector left, shaking hands. You're getting too close to her. I'm doing my job. Your job doesn't require having dinner at her house or spending 18-hour days on her property. Ethan felt anger spike in his chest. You're spying on me now? I'm documenting concerns. There's a difference. Gerald pocketed his phone. Look, Ethan, I get it. She's attractive, she's got money, and you're lonely. But she's trouble. Everything she touches turns into a problem. The only problem I see is you harassing someone because she doesn't follow your rules to the letter. Those rules exist for a reason. Yeah, to give you power. Ethan crossed his arms. You got anything else, Gerald? Because I've got work to do. Gerald's expression hardened. Be careful, Ethan. You've got a good reputation in this neighborhood. Wouldn't want to see you throw it away for someone like her. He left without waiting for a response. Ethan stood on his porch, hands shaking with suppressed rage, and wondered how far Gerald would go to make his point. He found out Friday afternoon. He was finishing up at a client's house when his phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Cole? This is Detective Sarah Martinez with the County Sheriff's Department. We need to speak with you about some allegations that have been made. The bottom fell out of Ethan's world. What kind of allegations? I'd rather discuss this in person. Can you come down to the station today? Yes, what time? 4 o'clock. Ask for me at the front desk. She hung up. Ethan sat in his truck, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe through the panic. Allegations. That could mean anything, but the timing, right after his confrontation with Gerald, couldn't be coincidence. He called Aurora. We've got a problem. 20 minutes later, they were sitting in her living room, and Ethan was explaining the call. They didn't say what the allegations were? Aurora asked. No, just that they needed to speak with me. Then we go together. You don't talk to them without representation. I can't afford a lawyer. Good thing you know someone who can. She was already on her phone. I've got a guy, criminal defense. He's expensive, but he's good. Aurora, I can't. You're not paying. I am. This is connected to me, which means it's my problem too. You don't know that. Cole, don't be stupid. Gerald's coming after you because you're helping me. The least I can do is make sure you don't get railroaded. The lawyer met them at the station, a sharp-dressed man in his 50s named Richard Kahn, who had the air of someone who'd seen everything twice and been bored the first time. Don't say anything unless I tell you to, he instructed Ethan. Let me handle this. Detective Martinez was professional, but firm. She led them to an interview room and laid out the situation. Someone had filed a complaint alleging that Ethan's work on Aurora's property was being used to conceal illegal activities. Specifically, that the drainage work was actually preparation for an underground storage facility, and that materials delivered to the site didn't match the permits filed. That's insane, Ethan said. Let me see the complaint, Kahn interrupted. Martinez slid a folder across the table. Kahn read through it, expression unchanging. This is thin, he said finally. You've got an anonymous complaint with no physical evidence. We're obligated to investigate. Investigate what? My client filed permits, passed inspection, and did everything by the book. Show me one piece of actual evidence that suggests otherwise. Martinez looked uncomfortable. We're looking into it. Looking into a false complaint designed to harass my client. Kahn stood. Unless you're charging him with something, we're done here. They left the station and Ethan felt like he was walking through water. Everything was muffled, distant. This is Gerald, he said once they were in the parking lot. It has to be. Probably, Kahn agreed, but proving it's another matter. Anonymous complaints are hard to trace. So what do we do? You keep your head down and stay clean. Don't give them any ammunition. Kahn handed Aurora his card. If they contact you again, call me immediately. Don't say a word to anyone without me present. After Kahn left, Aurora and Ethan sat in her car, neither speaking for a long moment. I'm sorry, she said finally. For what? For dragging you into this mess. Gerald's after me. You're just collateral damage. Stop. I made my own choices. Choices that are about to destroy your reputation. Maybe. Ethan looked at her. Or maybe I'm done letting people like Gerald dictate how I live my life. Aurora's jaw tightened. He's not going to stop. You know that, right? He'll keep pushing until one of us breaks. Then we push back harder. How? Ethan didn't have an answer for that. Not yet. He picked up Mia from school, made dinner, helped with homework, and went through all the normal motions of his normal life. But underneath, everything felt fragile. One wrong move and it would all come apart. That night, after Mia was asleep, he sat on his back porch and stared at Aurora's house. The lights were on in her kitchen. He could see her moving around, probably working on something, unable to turn her brain off. His phone buzzed. "You okay?" He typed back. "Not really." "Want to talk about it?" "Not sure there's anything to say." 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. Then, "Come over. Bring beer if you have it." Ethan looked at his phone for a long moment. This was a line. Once he crossed it, things would be different, complicated. He grabbed 2 beers from his fridge and walked across the lawn. Aurora opened the door before he could knock. She looked tired, really tired, the kind that went bone deep. "Mia asleep?" she asked. "Yeah, I've got the monitor." He held it up. They sat on her back porch, drinking beer and watching the moon rise over the neighborhood. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then Aurora said, "I'm thinking about selling the house." Ethan turned to her. "What?" "This whole thing with Gerald, the HOA, now the police. Maybe it's not worth it. I can find somewhere else to live, somewhere easier. Running away doesn't seem like your style." "It's not running, it's being practical. I don't need this stress, and neither do you. You want to let Gerald win?" "I want to stop making your life harder." She took a long drink. "You've got Mia to think about. Your business. If I'm the problem, removing me solves it. Except it doesn't, because Gerald will just find someone else to target, and you'll be living somewhere else, wondering if you made the right call." Ethan set down his beer. "You said you wanted this to be home. Was that true?" Aurora was quiet for a long moment. "Yeah, it was true." "Then stay, fight, make Gerald regret ever starting this. And if it gets worse, then we deal with it, together." She looked at him, and something passed between them, an understanding, maybe, or a promise. "You're either very brave or very stupid, Cole. Probably both." Aurora laughed, and the tension broke slightly. They finished their beers and talked about nothing important. Mia's science project, Aurora's terrible coffee, the fact that neither of them had slept properly in weeks. Around midnight, Ethan's monitor crackled. Mia's voice sleepy. "Dad? I should go," he said. "Yeah." But neither of them moved. "Cole? Yeah?" "Thanks for not giving up on me." "Same to you." He went home, checked on Mia, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling again. Except this time, instead of feeling trapped, he felt something else. Determination. Saturday morning, Ethan woke to find his truck tires slashed. All 4 of them. Clean cuts, professional job. He stood in his driveway, phone in hand, trying to decide whether to call the police or just handle it himself. Aurora came over still in pajamas. "What happened?" He pointed. "Son of a bitch." She pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the cops." "Don't. It'll just make things worse." "Cole, someone vandalized your property. You can't just ignore that. Watch me." But she was already dialing. The police came, took a report, and essentially told them there wasn't much they could do without evidence. After they left, Ethan called a tow truck and arranged to have the tires replaced. "This is Gerald's doing," Aurora said. "You don't know that." "Don't I? Come on, Cole. The timing's too convenient." She was right, but proving it was impossible. The tires cost $600 he didn't have. Aurora offered to pay, but he refused. He'd figure it out. He always did. That afternoon, while the tires were being replaced, Aurora disappeared into her house and didn't come out for hours. When she finally emerged, she had a look on her face that made Ethan nervous. "What did you do?" he asked. "Nothing yet, but I'm working on something." "Aurora, trust me." That was the problem. He did trust her. and that scared the hell out of him. Sunday was quiet. Too quiet. Ethan spent the day with Mia, taking her to the park, avoiding his phone, trying to pretend everything was normal. But Monday morning brought another letter from the HOA. This one was worse. It accused Ethan's business of operating illegally on residential property, claimed he was storing equipment and materials at his home in violation of zoning laws, and stated that if he didn't cease operations immediately, the board would pursue legal action. Ethan read it 3 times, each time feeling his carefully constructed life crumbling a little more. He walked over to Aurora's house and handed her the letter without a word. She read it, and her expression went cold. "This ends now." "How?" "I'm calling an emergency HOA meeting, forcing a vote on Gerald's leadership." "You can't do that." "Actually, I can. I've been reading the bylaws. Any property owner can petition for a special meeting with enough signatures. I've got money, Cole. I can make people listen." "This is going to blow up in our faces." "Maybe. But at least we'll go down swinging." Ethan wanted to argue, wanted to tell her this was a terrible idea, that they should just comply, keep their heads down, survive. But he was tired of surviving, tired of Gerald's threats, tired of living in fear. "All right," he said, "let's do it." Aurora smiled, fierce and sharp and completely unafraid. "Now you're talking." The author said. They had 72 hours to collect signatures. Aurora needed 20% of the homeowners, 34 signatures out of 170 properties, to force the emergency meeting. It sounded simple on paper. In practice, it meant knocking on doors in a neighborhood where half the residents thought Aurora was a menace, and the other half were too afraid of Gerald to get involved. Ethan stood in Aurora's kitchen Tuesday morning, watching her print out petition forms on expensive cardstock, like this was a corporate merger instead of a neighborhood dispute. "You really think this'll work?" he asked. "I think we don't have a choice." She handed him a stack of forms. "You take the east side, I'll handle west. We meet back here at 6. "What do I say when they ask why?" "The truth. That Gerald's abusing his power and someone needs to stop him. And when they slam the door in my face, then you move to the next house." Aurora grabbed her keys. "Come on, Cole. Where's that fight you had yesterday?" "I left it in my slashed tires." She paused at that, something softening in her expression. "We're going to fix this. All of it. I promise." Ethan wanted to believe her, but promises were easy. Following through was the hard part. The first house he tried was the Caldwells, 3 doors down. Mrs. Caldwell answered in a bathrobe, coffee mug in hand, looking like she'd been up since dawn. "Ethan, morning. What can I do for you?" He explained the situation, keeping it brief and factual. Mrs. Caldwell listened, nodding occasionally, her expression unreadable. "So, you want me to sign something that goes against Gerald," she said when he finished. "I want you to sign something that gives homeowners a voice. Gerald's been making decisions without input. This is about accountability. Gerald keeps this place running smoothly. Does he? Or does he just keep it running the way he wants?" Mrs. Caldwell took a long sip of coffee. "I've lived here 12 years, Ethan. Never had a problem until that woman moved in. Aurora's not the problem. She's just the excuse Gerald's using to tighten control. Maybe, but I'm not signing." She started to close the door. "Sorry, nothing personal." The door clicked shut. Ethan stood on the porch for a moment, then moved to the next house. And the next. And the next. By noon, he had 3 signatures. 3. Out of 20 houses he'd tried. The rest were either not home, not interested, or actively hostile. One man, Dennis Pritchard, a retired accountant, had actually laughed in his face. "You're committing career suicide, Cole. Gerald's got friends, big friends. You go through with this, you'll never work in this county again." Ethan had walked away without responding, but the words stuck with him. Because Pritchard wasn't wrong. Gerald had connections, contractors, suppliers, city council members. If he wanted to destroy Ethan's business, he could do it without breaking a sweat. But what was the alternative? Roll over? Let Gerald win? His phone buzzed. Text from Aurora. 7 signatures. You? 3. Better than 0. Keep going. He did. But by 3 o'clock, his total had only climbed to 6, and he was exhausted, emotionally more than physically. Every rejection felt personal, even though he knew it wasn't. People were scared. That was the truth of it. Gerald had cultivated that fear for years, and now it was working exactly as intended. Ethan was heading back to his truck when he saw Monica's car pull up to his house. Perfect timing. She got out looking like she'd just come from a business meeting, tailored suit, hair pulled back, the version of herself she showed the world. Mia climbed out of the passenger side, backpack slung over one shoulder. "You're early," Ethan said. "Mia texted me. Said something happened to your truck." "It's handled." Monica studied him. "You look like hell." "Thanks." "What's going on, Ethan? Mia says there's police coming around. And some woman next door?" "It's nothing. Doesn't sound like nothing." Mia was watching them, trying to look like she wasn't listening. Ethan lowered his voice. "Can we not do this here?" "Do what?" "Ask basic questions about my daughter's safety?" "She's safe. Everything's under control." "Then why are the police involved?" "False accusations. It's being handled." Monica's expression hardened. "If this affects Mia, it won't." "You don't know that." "Monica, I've got this, okay? Trust me." She didn't look convinced, but she let it drop. "I'm picking her up Friday. Don't forget." "I won't." After Monica left, Mia came over and slipped her hand into his. "Are we in trouble?" "No, baby. We're fine." "Mom seemed mad." "Mom's always a little mad. That's just how she is." Mia didn't laugh. "Is it because of Aurora?" "Why would you think that?" "Because you're over there a lot. And Mom doesn't like it when you're happy." Ethan crouched down to her level. "Listen to me. What's happening with the HOA, with Gerald, with all of it? None of that's your problem. You let me worry about the grown-up stuff. Your job is to be 8 and do your homework and not eat all the cookies before dinner." "I only ate 2. Liar." That got a smile, small but real. "Go inside and start on your homework," Ethan said. "I'll be there in a minute." She hugged him, quick and fierce, and ran into the house. Ethan stood in his driveway watching her go and felt the weight of every decision he'd made pressing down on his shoulders. Maybe Monica was right. Maybe he was being reckless. Maybe he should just cut his losses and walk away. But then he thought about Aurora, standing in her kitchen this morning, printing petition forms with the kind of determination that didn't know how to quit. And he thought about the way Mia had looked at him just now, trusting him completely, even when everything around them was falling apart. He pulled out his phone and texted Aurora. "I'm coming to help with the west side. 2 heads better than 1. You sure?" "Yeah." "Where are you?" She sent an address. Ethan told Mia he'd be back in an hour, climbed into his truck, and drove across the neighborhood. He found Aurora sitting on the curb outside a house with a perfectly manicured lawn, looking about as defeated as he'd ever seen her. "Rough afternoon?" he asked, sitting down beside her. 17 houses, 4 signatures. She rubbed her eyes. "I thought money would help. Figured people would listen if I threw enough weight around. But they just see me as the problem." "Gerald's good at what he does. He's been building this power base for years. We've had 2 weeks." "So what do we do?" We keep going. Hit every house if we have to." Aurora looked at him. "Why are you doing this? You could walk away. Let me fight this alone." "Because you're right. Gerald needs to be stopped. And because—" Ethan hesitated. "Because I'm tired of being afraid. Tired of playing it safe. My whole life I've done everything by the book. And where's it gotten me? Divorced? Broke? Working 80 hours a week just to stay afloat? Maybe it's time to take a risk." "This is one hell of a risk, Cole." "Yeah, but at least I'm making the choice." They sat there for a moment, shoulder to shoulder on the curb, and Ethan realized something had shifted between them. This wasn't just about the HOA anymore. It wasn't even about Gerald. It was about 2 people who'd been fighting alone for so long that they'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone in their corner. "All right," Aurora said, standing. "Let's finish this." They worked together for the next 3 hours, going door to door, making their case. Some people listened, most didn't. But slowly, signature by signature, the number climbed. By the time the sun set, they had 22. 12 more. Aurora said, checking the count. We can get 12 more tomorrow. We have to. They split up again Wednesday morning, and this time Ethan tried a different approach. Instead of leading with the petition, he talked to people about their own experiences with the HOA. What rules bothered them? What decisions Gerald had made that they disagreed with? Once people started talking, they usually kept going. And once they vented, they were more willing to sign. By Wednesday afternoon, they had 30 signatures, 4 more. Ethan tried the Hendersons' old neighbor, a widow named Patricia Chen, who'd lived in Riverside Estates longer than anyone. She listened to his pitch on her front porch, arms crossed, face skeptical. "You're asking me to go against Gerald," she said. "I'm asking you to vote for transparency. Gerald keeps this place safe, keeps our property values up. Does he, or does he just tell us that while making decisions that benefit him?" Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "My son wanted to put up a basketball hoop last year. Gerald said no, said it was an eyesore. My grandson was heartbroken. Did you fight it? What was the point? Gerald always wins. Not if people stand up to him." Ethan held out the petition. "This is your chance." She took it, read it, signed it. "Don't make me regret this," she said. "I won't." 3 more. Aurora got 2 more Wednesday evening. That left 1. They reconvened at her house, both exhausted, sitting on her porch with beer and takeout Chinese food that neither of them had much appetite for. "Who's left?" Ethan asked. Aurora checked her list. "Pretty much just the people who've already said no. We could try them again, but I don't think it'll work. Then we find someone new, someone we missed. We've hit every house, Cole." "Not every house." Ethan pulled out his phone, scrolling through the neighborhood directory. "The Millers, number 47. They're never home. Both work in the city. So how do we get to them?" "We wait." They waited. At 9:30, headlights swept across the street. A sedan pulled into the driveway at number 47. A man in his 30s got out, loosening his tie, looking like he'd had a long day. Ethan and Aurora walked over. "Mr. Miller?" Ethan called out. The man turned, immediately wary. "Yeah?" "Sorry to bother you this late. I'm Ethan Cole. This is Aurora Vale. We're your neighbors." "Okay." "We're petitioning for an emergency HOA meeting. Takes 2 minutes. Would you be willing to listen?" Miller glanced between them, clearly wanting to say no. But he was also polite. Ethan could see it in the way he shifted his weight, the way he didn't immediately shut them down. "What's this about?" Ethan explained. Kept it short, factual, non-emotional. Miller listened, expression unreadable. "You're asking me to sign something that could get me on the HOA's bad side," he said when Ethan finished. "I'm asking you to sign something that gives you a voice in how this neighborhood's run." "I don't have time for neighborhood politics. I work 60 hours a week." "Then don't you want someone accountable making decisions while you're gone?" Miller was quiet. Then, "You got a pen?" He signed, 34 signatures, exactly what they needed. Aurora let out a breath that sounded like relief and exhaustion combined. "We did it." "Yeah." Ethan stared at the petition form, hardly believing it. "Yeah, we did." They filed the petition Thursday morning. The HOA bylaws required the board to schedule the meeting within 10 business days. Gerald called Ethan's that afternoon. "This is a mistake," he said without preamble. "That's your opinion. You think you're going to win? You're not. I've been running this board for 8 years. People trust me. People are afraid of you. There's a difference. You're going to regret this, Ethan. Both of you." "We'll see." Gerald hung up. The meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday. That gave them a week to prepare. A week for Gerald to rally his supporters and undermine their position. A week for everything to go wrong. Friday morning, Ethan woke to find his business email flooded with cancellations. 3 clients, all scheduled for the next month, all pulling out with vague excuses about budget constraints or timeline changes. He called the first one back. Got voicemail. Tried the second, same thing. The third actually answered. "Look, Ethan, you're great at what you do," the woman said, "but I can't afford to get involved in whatever's happening with you and the HOA. I've got my own property to think about. This has nothing to do with your project." "Maybe, but Gerald called me yesterday, said some things. I can't risk it. I'm sorry. She hung up. Ethan sat at his kitchen table, staring at his phone, doing math in his head. 3 cancellations meant $15,000 in lost revenue. Money he'd been counting on. Money he needed to keep his business afloat and pay Mia's school expenses and cover the mortgage. He texted Aurora. Gerald's hitting back. Lost 3 clients this morning. Son of a bitch. I'll fix it. You can't fix everything. Watch me. But Ethan wasn't sure anything could be fixed at this point. He'd gambled everything on this meeting, and Gerald was proving exactly how much power he had. Saturday morning, Aurora showed up at his door with coffee and a folder full of documents. "What's this?" he asked. "Research. I've been digging into Gerald's tenure. Want to guess how many projects he's approved for his own contracting company?" "How many?" 12. In 8 years. Every single one at rates 20% higher than market average. She dropped the folder on his kitchen table. "He's been using the HOA as his personal client pipeline. That's fraud." Ethan flipped through the documents, invoices, approval forms, budget reports, all signed by Gerald in his capacity as HOA president. "Where'd you get these?" "Public records. HOA financials are supposed to be available to homeowners. I just had to know where to look." Aurora sat down. "We bring this to the meeting. We don't just remove him. We bury him. This could get legal." "Good. Let it." "Aurora." "He slashed your tires, Cole. He's destroying your business. He filed false police reports. How much more are you willing to take?" She was right. Ethan knew she was right, but there was taking a stand and then there was going nuclear. "If we do this," he said slowly, "there's no going back. Gerald's not going to just walk away. He'll come after us with everything he's got. Then we'd better make sure we win." They spent the weekend preparing. Aurora built a presentation with financial data and timelines. Ethan drafted a statement outlining Gerald's pattern of retaliation. They rehearsed their arguments until both of them could recite the facts in their sleep. Monday, Gerald made his next move. Ethan was loading equipment into his truck when a car pulled up. Expensive sedan, tinted windows. A man got out wearing a suit that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly mortgage. "Ethan Cole?" "Yeah." "I'm Marcus Reeves. I represent the Riverside Estates HOA. He handed Ethan an envelope. "You're being sued for breach of contract and defamation. You've been served." Ethan opened the envelope. Legal documents, dense with text, but the summary was clear. Gerald was suing him personally for $25,000, claiming Ethan had violated his contractor agreement and made false statements damaging to the HOA's reputation. "This is bullshit," Ethan said. "That's between you and your lawyer. Have a good day." Reeves got back in his car and drove off. Ethan called Richard Kahn immediately. "How bad is it?" he asked after explaining. "Manageable," Kahn said. "It's a nuisance suit, designed to intimidate you into backing down. We can fight it, but it's going to cost money and time." "How much money?" $5,000 minimum, maybe more depending on how long it drags out." $5,000. Money Ethan didn't have. He hung up and sat in his truck, trying to breathe through the panic. His phone rang. Aurora. "I heard," she said. "I'm covering the legal fees." "No." "Cole, don't be stupid. This is because of me. Let me handle it." "I'm not your charity case." "You're not charity. You're my—" She paused. "You're my partner in this. Partners help each other." Ethan wanted to argue, but pride wouldn't pay the lawyer. "Fine," he said, "but I'm paying you back. Whatever you need to tell yourself." Tuesday brought more pressure. Someone spray-painted "traitor" across Aurora's garage door. Ethan's website went down. Hacked, according to his hosting company. And Mia came home from school asking why some of the other parents weren't letting their kids play with her anymore. "I don't know, baby," Ethan lied. "Sometimes people are just weird." But he knew. And it made him want to put his fist through a wall. Wednesday evening, Aurora came over and found him on his back porch, staring at nothing. "You look like you're about to quit," she said. "I'm thinking about it." "Don't. Give me one good reason." She sat down beside him. "Because if you quit, Gerald wins. And everyone who's afraid of him stays afraid, and nothing changes." She paused. "And because Mia's watching. What do you want to teach her? That you fight for what's right, or that you roll over when things get hard? Ethan closed his eyes. That's a low blow. It's the truth. She was right. She was always right. One more day, he said. If we can survive one more day, we get to that meeting, and then we end this. Together? Yeah, together. Thursday arrived with clear skies and temperatures that felt more like summer than spring. Ethan dropped Mia at Monica's house. She'd agreed to take her for the night, though she'd made it clear she thought he was making a massive mistake. Be careful, she'd said at the door. Always am. No, you're not. That's the problem. The meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. at the community center. Ethan and Aurora arrived at 6:30 to set up. The room was already filling with homeowners, more people than Ethan had expected. Some looked supportive. Most looked curious. A few looked hostile. Gerald was there, front row, flanked by the other board members. He watched Ethan and Aurora set up their presentation with an expression that was almost amused. At 7 sharp, the meeting started. Gerald called it to order, going through procedural motions, clearly trying to control the narrative from the start. But the bylaws were clear. Aurora had the right to present her case. She stood at the podium, and for a moment, Ethan saw nervousness flicker across her face. Then she took a breath, and it was gone. I'm here tonight to address concerns about HOA leadership, she began. Specifically about President Gerald Hopkins and his pattern of retaliation, financial impropriety, and abuse of power. The room went silent. Aurora laid it out methodically. The contracts awarded to Gerald's company, the above-market rates, the pattern of complaints filed against anyone who questioned his decisions, the false police report, the harassment. She showed documents, financial records, email chains, everything. By the time she finished, the room was buzzing with conversation. Gerald stood. This is slander. Every decision I've made has been in the best interest of this community. Then explain the financials, Aurora shot back. Explain why your company got 12 contracts at rates 20% higher than competitors. I provided quality work. You provided self-dealing. That's corruption. The room erupted. People shouting questions, board members trying to defend Gerald, homeowners demanding answers. Ethan stood and raised his voice above the noise. We're not here to destroy anyone. We're here to demand accountability. If Gerald's done nothing wrong, let him prove it. Open the books. Full financial audit. Independent review. Second, someone called out, Patricia Chen, the widow who'd signed their petition. Third, another voice, then another. Gerald's face was red. This is out of order. No, Aurora interrupted. This is democracy. You've forgotten what that looks like. The vote was called. Show of hands for an independent audit and a vote of no confidence in Gerald's leadership. It wasn't even close. 70% in favor. Gerald stood there, jaw tight, looking at the room like he couldn't believe what was happening. You're making a mistake, he said finally. The only mistake was letting you run things unopposed for 8 years, Aurora replied. The meeting ended in chaos, people arguing, Gerald storming out, board members scrambling to figure out next steps. Ethan and Aurora stood in the middle of it all, exhausted and relieved and still processing what they'd just pulled off. Outside, in the parking lot, Aurora leaned against her car and laughed, real laughter, the kind that came from pure release. We did it, she said. We actually did it. Yeah. Ethan felt something unknot in his chest. We did. She looked at him, and something passed between them, something that had been building for weeks but neither of them had acknowledged. Cole? Yeah? Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for making me fight. They stood there in the parking lot, and Ethan realized that somewhere along the way, this had stopped being about the HOA. It had become about them, two people who'd been alone for too long, finding something in each other that felt like possibility. His phone buzzed. Weather alert, severe storm warning, heavy rain, high winds, possible tornadoes, expected to hit the area around midnight. You should get home, Aurora said, reading over his shoulder. So should you. But neither of them moved. The storm was coming, and everything was about to change. The wind picked up around 10 p.m. Not the gentle kind that rustled leaves and cooled the evening air, but something meaner, gusts that rattled windows and sent trash cans tumbling down driveways. Ethan stood at his kitchen window, watching the trees bend and sway, and felt unease settle in his gut. His phone lit up with another alert. Storm system intensifying. Tornado watch upgraded to warning. Seek shelter immediately if conditions deteriorate. He checked the time. Monica had texted 20 minutes ago saying Mia was already asleep, safe. That was what mattered. Another gust hit the house, strong enough that Ethan felt it in his bones. He grabbed a flashlight from the drawer, checked that his phone was fully charged, and looked outside again. Aurora's lights were still on. All of them. Like she was too wired from the meeting to even think about sleep. He texted her. Storm's getting worse. You prepared? Define prepared. Flashlight, water, battery radio. I have a phone and confidence. Does that count? Despite everything, Ethan smiled. Stay away from windows. If it gets bad, get to your basement. Yes, Dad. I'm serious. I know. That's why I like you. Ethan stared at that last message longer than he should have. Then the power flickered. Once. Twice. The lights died. His flashlight cut through the sudden darkness. Outside, the neighborhood went black except for a few houses with generators humming to life. The wind was howling now, a sound that made every primitive part of Ethan's brain scream danger. His phone rang. Aurora. Power's out, she said. Yeah, you got that flashlight yet? Looking for it. Hold on. Rustling sounds. Found it. This thing's about as bright as a birthday candle. Better than nothing. A massive gust hit, and Ethan heard something crash outside. Wood splintering, metal scraping pavement. What was that? Aurora asked. I don't know. Stay inside. Don't go looking. Cole, I mean it. This is dangerous. But even as he said it, Ethan was pulling on his boots and grabbing his rain jacket, because something about that sound, the way the wood had splintered, made him think of the oak tree, the one in Aurora's backyard, the one he'd stabilized weeks ago but never fully repaired. Cole, where are you going? Aurora's voice was sharp through the phone. Stay inside, he repeated and hung up. He stepped outside into chaos. The rain hadn't started yet, but the wind was biblical. 40, maybe 50-mile-per-hour gusts that nearly knocked him off his feet. He aimed his flashlight across the lawn toward Aurora's property and felt his stomach drop. The oak was leaning. Not much, maybe 10 degrees, but enough that Ethan could see the root ball lifting on one side. The temporary stabilization he'd installed was holding, but barely. Another few hours of this wind, and the whole thing would come down, directly onto Aurora's house. He ran toward her back gate, fighting the wind every step. Got it open, aimed his flashlight at the tree and saw what he'd feared. The main support cable had snapped. The tree was being held up by 2 secondary cables and luck, and both were running out. Aurora's back door opened. She stood silhouetted in the doorway, flashlight in hand. I told you to stay inside, Ethan shouted over the wind. And I don't take orders. She came down the porch steps. What's wrong? The oak. It's coming down. She looked where he was pointing, and even in the darkness, he could see her face go pale. How long? I don't know. Could be minutes. Could be hours. But it's not stable. What do we do? We try to resecure it, buy some time until the storm passes. In this wind? You got a better idea? Lightning split the sky, close enough that the thunder came almost immediately, a crack so loud it felt physical. And then the rain started. Not a drizzle or a shower, but a deluge. Sheets of water that turned visibility to maybe 10 feet. Ethan ran to his truck, grabbed his equipment bag and the spare cables he kept for emergency jobs. Aurora was right behind him, soaked through in seconds. What do you need? She yelled. Help me get this around the trunk. He pulled out a heavy-duty cable and a come-along. We anchor it to that support post, tension it up, might buy us a few hours. They worked in the storm, rain pounding them, wind trying to rip the cables from their hands. The tree groaned, an awful sound, like something alive and dying. Ethan looped the cable around the trunk as high as he could reach, while Aurora secured the other end to the support post he'd installed during the original work. Tighten it, he shouted. She worked the come-along, ratcheting the cable taut. The tree shifted slightly, settling back toward vertical. Not much, but enough. Another gust hit. And this time Ethan heard a crack that stopped his heart. He looked up and saw a branch, massive, maybe 15 feet long, tearing away from the main trunk. Time slowed. He saw it falling, saw Aurora directly beneath it, saw that she hadn't noticed because she was focused on the cable. He didn't think, just moved. Grabbed her around the waist and threw both of them sideways. They hit the ground hard, rolled through mud and grass, and the branch came down exactly where Aurora had been standing. It hit with enough force to crater the ground, missing them by maybe 3 feet. They lay there in the mud, breathing hard, rain hammering down. "You okay?" Ethan asked. "Yeah, you?" "Yeah." Neither of them moved for a moment. Then Aurora started laughing, that same wild, relieved laugh from the parking lot, but with an edge of hysteria. "We're going to die out here," she said. "Probably." "This is insane." "Yep." She turned her head to look at him, rain streaming down her face. "Thank you for that." "Don't mention it." Lightning flashed again, close enough that Ethan's hair stood on end. The thunder was instantaneous. "We need to get inside," he said. "Now." They scrambled up and ran for Aurora's house, made it onto the porch just as another gust hit, this one strong enough that Ethan felt the house shudder. Inside, they stood dripping in her kitchen, both breathing hard. Aurora's hair was plastered to her face. Ethan's jacket was torn from where he'd caught it on something during the fall. "The cable won't hold," Aurora said. "I know." "So what do we do?" "We wait and hope." But hope wasn't a plan, and that tree was coming down. It was just a question of when. Ethan pulled out his phone. The weather radar looked apocalyptic, a solid mass of red and purple stretching across the entire county. The storm wasn't weakening. If anything, it was intensifying. "How bad?" Aurora asked, looking over his shoulder. "Bad. Peak winds expected around midnight. That's..." He checked the time. 40 minutes from now. "The tree won't last that long." "No, it won't." They stood in her dark kitchen, flashlights casting weird shadows, and Ethan tried to think. There had to be something they could do. Some way to stabilize the tree or redirect its fall, or at least minimize the damage. "What if we cut it?" Aurora asked. "What?" "Cut it down ourselves, control the fall. Isn't that better than letting it come down on its own? In this wind, that's suicide. One wrong move and it comes down on us. Or your house. Or..." A sound interrupted him. Not wind or thunder or rain. Something else. A groan of wood under stress, followed by a sharp crack. They both ran to the back window. In the lightning flashes, Ethan could see the tree leaning further. The root ball was completely exposed now, a massive tangle of wood and earth tilting skyward. As they watched, another root snapped, audible even over the storm. "It's going," Aurora said. "Yeah." "What do we do?" Ethan's mind was racing. The tree was going to fall. That was inevitable now. The only question was where. If it went straight back, it would miss the house. But if the wind caught it wrong, if it twisted as it fell, it could take out Aurora's entire back wall, and anyone inside. "You need to get out," he said. "What?" "The house. You need to evacuate now. Go to my place. It's out of the fall zone. I'm not leaving. Aurora, this is my house. I'm not abandoning it." "It's just a house." "No, it's not." She rounded on him, eyes blazing. "It's the first place that's ever felt like mine. The first place I chose. The first place I thought I could actually build a life. So no, I'm not leaving." Another crack. Louder this time. The tree shifted several more degrees. Ethan made a decision, probably a stupid one, but he was out of smart options. "Okay, then we do this together." He grabbed his equipment bag. "We can't stop it from falling, but we can try to guide it. I've got rope. We run a line to my truck, use the winch to pull it away from the house." "That'll work?" "Maybe, if we're lucky. If the wind cooperates. If the tree doesn't snap in half." He met her eyes. "It's the best shot we've got." "Then let's do it." They went back out into the storm. The rain was torrential now, so heavy that Ethan could barely see his own hands. He got the rope from his truck, 200 feet of climbing grade line, and together they fought their way to the tree. Up close, it was terrifying. The whole massive structure was swaying, roots grinding against earth, making sounds like a wounded animal. The trunk was at maybe a 30-degree angle now. Minutes left. Maybe less. "We need to get this high as we can," Ethan shouted. "Above the center of gravity." "How?" He looked at the tree, at the branches, at the ladder he'd left leaning against Aurora's shed weeks ago and never retrieved. It was insane. Climbing a dying tree in hurricane-force winds, but staying on the ground wasn't going to cut it. They needed height to get the leverage right. "I'm going up." "The hell you are!" Aurora grabbed his arm. "You'll get killed. You got a better idea?" She didn't. They both knew she didn't. Ethan grabbed the ladder, positioned it against the trunk, and started climbing. The wind tried to rip him off with every step. Rain made the rungs slippery. The tree swayed and groaned beneath him. But he kept going. 15 feet up. 20. He found a solid branch, or as solid as anything could be on a dying tree, and looped the rope around it, tied it off with a bowline, double-checked the knot, started to climb down. That's when the wind hit. A gust so strong it felt like a physical blow. The ladder shifted. Ethan grabbed for the tree trunk, missed, felt himself falling. His stomach dropped. The ground rushed up. He hit hard. Flat on his back. The air exploded from his lungs. For a moment he couldn't breathe, couldn't move, could only lie there in the mud while his body screamed that something was broken. Aurora was there, hands on his face. "Cole! Ethan! Can you hear me?" He managed to nod, tried to breathe, finally got air into his lungs, painful, but working. "Don't move," she said. "You could be hurt." "I'm fine." He wasn't fine. His entire back felt like one massive bruise, and his left wrist was screaming. But he could move his legs, his arms. Nothing broken, just battered. "We need to get you inside." "No." He struggled to sit up. "The rope. Did it hold?" Aurora looked up. In the lightning flashes, they could see the rope still secured to the branch, the other end trailing down. "It held," she said. "Then we finish this." "Cole, you can barely stand." "I'll stand when I need to." He grabbed the rope, started dragging it toward his truck. Every movement hurt, but he kept going. Aurora tried to take the rope from him, but he waved her off. "Get the winch ready. We're out of time." The tree was at 45 degrees now. Any second, it was going all the way down. They reached the truck. Ethan hooked the rope to the winch while Aurora climbed into the driver's seat. The truck was parked in his driveway, far enough from the tree's fall zone, close enough to get tension on the rope. "When I say go, hit the winch," Ethan shouted. "Pull steady, don't jerk it." "Got it." He positioned himself where he could see both the tree and Aurora. The wind was at its peak now, screaming like something alive. The tree was making sounds Ethan had never heard before, cracks and pops and groans all mixing together. "Now!" he shouted. Aurora hit the winch. The rope went taut. The truck strained. The tree resisted for a moment, 40,000 pounds of wood and earth refusing to budge. Then slowly, it started to shift, away from the house, toward the open yard. "More!" Ethan yelled. The winch whined. The rope creaked. The tree leaned further, and then gravity took over. It fell in slow motion. Or maybe time just stretched, the way it does when everything's going wrong and there's nothing you can do but watch. The massive trunk arced through the air, branches snapping off, rain glittering in the lightning flashes. It fell away from the house, away from Aurora, away from everything except empty lawn. It hit the ground with a sound like the end of the world. The impact shook the earth. Branches exploded in every direction. Mud and water sprayed up. And then silence. Or as close to silence as you could get in a storm. Just wind and rain, but no more groaning wood, no more cracking roots. Ethan stood there, soaked and battered, and hardly believing they'd pulled it off. The tree was down. The house was intact. Nobody was dead. Aurora climbed out of the truck and walked over to him. She looked at the fallen tree, then at Ethan, then back at the tree. "We did it," she said. "Yeah." "You're insane." "Yeah." She hit him, not hard, but enough that he felt it. "Don't ever do something that stupid again." "Which part?" "All of it. Any of it." Her voice cracked. "You could have died. So could you. That's different." "How?" She didn't have an answer for that. Or maybe she did, but couldn't say it. They stood in the rain looking at each other, and something fundamental shifted. All the walls they'd been maintaining, all the careful distance, none of it mattered anymore. They just survived something that should have killed them, and pretending there was nothing between them felt absurd. Ethan reached out and touched her face. Aurora leaned into it, and then they were kissing, desperate and relieved and tasting like rain and mud and adrenaline. When they finally broke apart, Aurora was crying, or maybe it was just rain, hard to tell. "Come inside," she said, "before hypothermia finishes what the tree couldn't." They stumbled into her house, leaving muddy footprints across her kitchen floor. Aurora found towels. Ethan peeled off his destroyed jacket. His wrist was swelling, probably sprained from the fall. His back was a mess of bruises he'd feel for weeks. But he was alive. "Sit," Aurora ordered, pointing at a kitchen chair. He sat. She disappeared into the bathroom and came back with a first aid kit. "Let me see the wrist." He held it out. She examined it carefully, prodding at the swelling. He tried not to wince. "Not broken," she said, "but you should probably get it x-rayed." "Tomorrow." "Cole, tomorrow," he repeated. "I'm not going anywhere tonight." She didn't argue, just wrapped his wrist in an elastic bandage, working with careful precision. When she finished, she didn't let go of his hand. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for staying, for helping, for not letting me face this alone. Where else would I be? Safe, smart, literally anywhere but here." "Yeah, well, I've never been great at smart decisions." Aurora laughed, soft and tired. "You jumped in front of a falling tree branch for me." Seemed like the thing to do at the time. Most people would have run. I'm not most people. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, "No, you're really not." The storm raged outside for another 2 hours. They sat in Aurora's kitchen, drinking terrible instant coffee heated on her gas stove, listening to the wind try to tear the world apart. Around 2 a.m., the worst passed. The rain continued, but the wind died down to something manageable. Ethan's phone buzzed. Text from Monica. "Everything okay? News says bad storms your way." He typed back, "Fine. Tree came down, but we're good." "We?" "Me and Aurora. Long story." "Jesus, Ethan. Be careful. Always." Aurora was looking at her phone too. "HOA, emergency email. They're calling another meeting, tomorrow night. Gerald's trying to overturn the vote." "Of course he is. Says there were procedural errors, that the meeting wasn't valid." She scrolled through the email. "He's not going quietly." "Never thought he would. You too tired to fight him again?" Ethan thought about that. His body was screaming at him. His wrist throbbed. He had maybe 3 hours of sleep in his future before he had to deal with real life again. But when he looked at Aurora, exhausted and mud-streaked and absolutely refusing to give up, the answer was obvious. "Not even close," he said. She smiled. "Good, because I'm just getting started." They made a plan, or tried to. Both of them were running on fumes and adrenaline, which made strategic thinking difficult. But the basics were clear. Gerald was trying to invalidate the vote on a technicality. They needed to prove the meeting was conducted properly, which meant going back through the bylaws and documenting every step they'd taken. "I'll handle the paperwork," Aurora said. "You focus on the physical damage. We need to show that the tree situation was an emergency, that your work tonight was necessary and justified. I'll document everything, photos, measurements, the whole deal. And your wrist? I'll live. Cole, I'll get it looked at tomorrow, I promise." The sky was starting to lighten when Ethan finally left. The rain had stopped. The neighborhood looked like a war zone, branches down everywhere, debris scattered across lawns, power lines sagging dangerously low. But Aurora's house stood intact. The tree had missed it by maybe 15 feet. Close enough to be terrifying. Far enough to be a miracle. Ethan walked home through the wreckage, every step a reminder of how badly the night could have gone. How close they'd come to losing everything. His house was fine. A few shingles missing, some gutters torn loose. Nothing catastrophic. He stripped off his wet clothes, took the world's fastest shower, and collapsed into bed. His alarm went off 3 hours later. Friday morning. Time to face whatever came next. He checked his phone. 17 missed calls, 8 voicemails, dozens of texts, some from clients whose properties had been damaged in the storm, some from neighbors asking if he was okay. One from Richard Kahn. Call me. Gerald's filed an injunction. Ethan called him back. Talk to me, he said. Gerald's claiming the emergency meeting was invalid because proper notice wasn't given. He's filed with the county to block any actions taken during that meeting, including the vote of no confidence and the audit request. Can he do that? He can try. Whether it'll hold up is another question. We've got a hearing Monday. You and Aurora need to be there. We'll be there. After he hung up, Ethan sat on his bed and tried to process everything. The storm, the tree, the kiss, Gerald's continued attacks. It was too much. All of it was too much. But he didn't have the luxury of being overwhelmed. He had Mia to pick up from Monica's, clients to call back, storm damage to assess, and another fight with Gerald on the horizon. He got dressed, grabbed coffee he didn't taste, and headed out into the debris-strewn morning. Aurora was already in her backyard surveying the damage. The fallen tree dominated the landscape, a massive corpse of wood and roots stretching 40 feet across her lawn. "Morning!" she called out when she saw him. "Morning. You sleep?" 2 hours. You? 3. We're getting good at this whole functional exhaustion thing. Despite everything, Ethan smiled. Yeah, we are. They spent the morning documenting the damage. Ethan took photos from every angle, measured the tree's dimensions, documented the root failure and the broken cables. Aurora handled the paperwork, pulling permits, writing up incident reports, building their case that everything they'd done was necessary and justified. Around noon, Gerald showed up. He stood at the property line, looking at the fallen tree with an expression Ethan couldn't quite read. "That could have been much worse," Gerald said. "Yeah, could have been. Lucky the house wasn't damaged." "Wasn't luck. It was planning." Gerald's eyes flicked to Ethan. "Planning. Is that what you call risking your life in a storm?" "I call it doing my job." "Your job?" Gerald smiled, cold and thin. "You're aware that the HOA hasn't authorized any emergency tree work? That technically you were operating without permission?" Ethan felt anger surge in his chest. The tree was coming down. Aurora's house was in danger. I wasn't going to wait for committee approval. Noble, but also illegal. You violated HOA guidelines. Again. Gerald pulled out his phone. "I'm documenting this, adding it to the list of violations." "You do that," Aurora said, coming around the side of the house. "And while you're at it, document that your negligence caused the situation in the first place. That tree should have been addressed months ago. The HOA knew it was damaged, but you refused to authorize repairs because it wasn't your priority." "That's not how—" "I've got the maintenance logs," Aurora interrupted. 3 separate reports filed by homeowners about that tree, all ignored, all buried. "So yeah, Gerald, add this to your list, but remember that we've got our own list, and it's a hell of a lot longer than yours." Gerald's expression hardened. "You're going to regret this, both of you." "Maybe," Aurora said, "but at least we'll regret it together." He left without another word. Ethan watched him go, then turned to Aurora. "That was stupid, reckless, probably going to make everything worse?" "I was going to say impressive." She grinned. "Yeah, it kind of was." They worked through the afternoon, cleaning up debris, making temporary repairs, preparing for the hearing on Monday. Around 4, Ethan's phone rang. "Monica." "Where are you?" she asked. "You were supposed to pick up Mia an hour ago." Ethan checked the time and swore. "I'm sorry. I lost track. I'll be there in 20 minutes. "You sound exhausted. Long night." "Ethan, are you okay? Really?" He thought about lying, but Monica knew him too well. "I've been better, but I'm managing." "Is it worth it, this whole thing with the HOA?" "Yeah, it is." She was quiet for a moment, then, "Be careful. Mia needs you in one piece." "I know." He picked up Mia, who immediately noticed his bandaged wrist. "What happened?" she asked. Tree came down in the storm. Had to help Aurora. Is she okay? She's fine. We're all fine. Mia studied him with those two smart eyes. You like her? She's my friend. No, I mean you like her. Ethan nearly drove off the road. What? It's okay, Dad. You're allowed to like people. Out of the mouths of 8-year-olds, Ethan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It's complicated, he said finally. Grown-up stuff always is. They drove home in comfortable silence. When they pulled into the driveway, Aurora was sitting on his front porch, laptop balanced on her knees. Hi, Mia, she called out. Mia waved and ran inside to drop off her bag. Aurora closed her laptop and looked at Ethan. We got a problem, she said. Another one? Gerald's lawyer contacted mine. They're threatening another lawsuit, this time for the tree work, claiming you operated without authorization and caused additional property damage. That's insane. That's Gerald. She stood. But here's the thing. My lawyer thinks we can flip it, countersue for the HOA's negligence. Make this about their failure to address the tree issue months ago. That'll get expensive. I've got money. Aurora. Cole, stop. This isn't charity. This is war, and I don't lose wars. Mia came back outside. Can Aurora stay for dinner? Ethan looked at Aurora. She looked at him. Please? Mia added. I want to show her my science project. If it's okay with your dad, Aurora said. It wasn't okay. It was complicated and messy and blurred every line Ethan had tried to maintain. But when he looked at his daughter's hopeful face and at Aurora's tired smile, he couldn't think of a good reason to say no. Yeah, he said. Stay. They ordered pizza. Mia gave Aurora a detailed presentation on plant growth that was probably twice as long as necessary. They ate on the back porch, watching the sun set over a neighborhood still recovering from the storm. And for a few hours, everything felt normal. Like they were just 3 people sharing a meal, not combatants in a war that kept escalating. After Mia went to bed, Aurora helped Ethan clean up. Thank you, he said, for being patient with her, for staying. She's great. You're raising her right. I'm trying. Some days I feel like I'm failing. You're not. Aurora dried the last plate and set it down. She's smart, kind, curious. That doesn't happen by accident. They stood in his kitchen, and Ethan felt the weight of everything pressing down. The storm, the tree, Gerald's threats, the kiss they hadn't talked about. All of it was too much, too complicated, too real. Aurora, don't, she interrupted. Don't overthink whatever you're about to say. We've got enough to deal with. We don't need to add relationship drama to the list. Is that what this is? Relationship drama? I don't know what this is. Do you? Ethan didn't, but he knew what it felt like standing on the edge of something that could either save him or destroy him, like taking the biggest risk of his life. No, he admitted. I don't. Then let's get through Monday, deal with Gerald, win this thing, and then we can figure out the rest. It was sensible, practical. Everything Ethan usually valued, but for once, he didn't want sensible. He kissed her, quick and urgent and completely inevitable. Aurora kissed him back, hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she said, That was not getting through Monday first. I know. We're terrible at following our own advice. Yeah. She laughed and kissed him again, and for a moment, everything else fell away. Gerald, the HOA, the storm, all of it. There was just this. Just them. Aurora left around midnight. Ethan stood on his porch and watched her walk across the lawn to her house and felt something shift inside him, something that had been locked down for 2 years, ever since Monica left. Hope. Terrifying and exhilarating and completely unpredictable. Just like Aurora herself. Monday was coming, and with it, another battle. But for the first time in a long time, Ethan felt like he wasn't fighting alone. The weekend crawled by in a blur of preparation and exhaustion. Ethan and Aurora spent Saturday building their case for Monday's hearing, surrounded by documents and coffee cups and the kind of focused silence that comes from knowing everything's on the line. Richard Kahn stopped by Sunday afternoon to review their evidence, and the expression on his face shifted from cautious to confident as he read through Aurora's findings. "This is good," he said, tapping the financial records. "Really good. Gerald's going to have a hard time explaining away 12 contracts to his own company. And if we can prove the HOA knew about the tree hazard and did nothing, his negligence claim falls apart." "What are our chances?" Ethan asked. Con looked at him over his reading glasses. "Honestly, 60-40 in our favor. Maybe better if Gerald's lawyer gets overconfident, but nothing's guaranteed. He's got resources, connections, and 8 years of board control. That counts for something." After Con left, Aurora paced her living room like a caged animal. 60-40, she muttered. "I've built companies on worse odds, but this feels different." "Because it's personal," Ethan said. "Yeah." She stopped pacing and looked at him. "I keep thinking about what happens if we lose. If Gerald wins and I have to sell this place, start over somewhere else. You wouldn't be starting over, you'd just be somewhere different. Except I don't want somewhere different. I want here." Her voice cracked slightly. "I want this house, this neighborhood, this, She gestured between them. "Whatever this is, I'm tired of running." Ethan stood and crossed to her. "Then we don't lose." "You can't promise that." "No, but I can promise I'll fight like hell to make sure we don't." She leaned into him, and they stood there in her chaotic living room, holding on to each other like it was the only solid thing left in the world. Monday morning came too fast. Ethan dropped Mia at school, ignoring her questions about why he was wearing a suit. He owned exactly one, purchased for his grandfather's funeral and rarely worn since. It fit poorly and smelled like mothballs, but it was the best he had. Aurora met him at the county courthouse, looking like she'd stepped out of a boardroom. Sharp blazer, tailored pants, hair pulled back in a way that made her look older and more severe. The transformation was jarring. "You clean up nice," she said. "You look terrifying." "Good. That's the plan." Gerald was already there, flanked by his lawyer. A woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and an expression that suggested she'd seen every trick in the book and invented a few of her own. They stood in the hallway outside the courtroom, and when Gerald saw Ethan and Aurora, something ugly flickered across his face. "Last chance to settle this quietly," he said. "Drop your complaints, accept the HOA ruling, and we can all move on." "Or what?" Aurora asked. "Or I bury you both, legally and financially. Your choice." Richard Kahn appeared before either of them could respond. "My clients have nothing to discuss with you, Gerald. Save it for the judge." The hearing was held in a small courtroom that smelled like old wood and stress. Judge Patricia Mendoza presided, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. She reviewed the case summary, glanced at both parties, and sighed. "All right, let's make this quick. Mr. Hopkins, your attorney filed an injunction claiming the emergency HOA meeting held on," she checked her notes, "Thursday the 15th was conducted improperly. What's your basis for this claim?" Gerald's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, the HOA bylaws require 7 days' notice for any special meeting. The petitioners only provided 72 hours. That's a clear violation of procedure, which invalidates any votes taken during that meeting." Judge Mendoza looked at Kahn. "Response?" "The bylaws allow for expedited notice in cases of urgent community concern. My clients demonstrated sufficient cause, specifically ongoing harassment, retaliation, and financial misconduct by HOA leadership. The petition collected the required signatures within the allowed time frame. The meeting was valid." "That's a creative interpretation," Gerald's lawyer said, "but the bylaws clearly state—" "I can read," Judge Mendoza interrupted, "and I've got the bylaws right here. Let's see what they actually say." She flipped through a thick document, running her finger down the pages. "Emergency meetings may be called with shortened notice in cases of," and I'm quoting, "imminent harm to community welfare, financial emergency, or leadership misconduct requiring immediate review." "That seem accurate to you, Ms. Brennan?" Gerald's lawyer, Brennan, looked uncomfortable. "The interpretation of imminent harm is subjective. Everything's subjective if you argue hard enough, but I'm more interested in the evidence." She looked at Aurora and Ethan. "You two have documentation supporting your claims?" Khan stepped forward with their folder. Financial records showing contracts awarded to Mr. Hopkins' company at above-market rates. Email correspondence demonstrating retaliation against homeowners who questioned board decisions, police reports of harassment and vandalism, and documentation of a hazardous tree that the HOA failed to address despite multiple warnings. Judge Mendoza spent 10 minutes reading through everything. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of pages turning. Finally, she set the documents down and looked at Gerald. Mr. Hopkins, these are serious allegations, especially the financial ones. You want to explain why your company received 12 contracts from an HOA you control? Gerald stood. Those were competitive bids. Were they? Because I'm looking at bid comparisons here, and your rates are consistently 20% higher than competitors. That doesn't strike me as competitive. Quality work costs money. Quality work also requires transparency, and from what I'm seeing, you approved these contracts without full board review. That's self-dealing. Gerald's jaw tightened. The board trusted my judgment, or the board was intimidated into compliance. Judge Mendoza leaned back. Here's what I see. An HOA president who's been operating with minimal oversight for 8 years, homeowners who finally pushed back, and now an attempt to shut them down on a technicality. She picked up the bylaws. The meeting was properly called. The emergency standard was met. The injunction is denied. Gerald's face went red. Your Honor, I'm not finished. Additionally, I'm ordering a full forensic audit of HOA finances for the past 8 years. Independent auditor paid for by HOA funds. And Mr. Hopkins, you're stepping down as president effective immediately. The board will elect interim leadership pending the audit results. You can't do that. I absolutely can. This is a civil matter involving potential fraud. I have discretion here. She banged her gavel. We're done. Next case. Ethan stood there, barely processing what had just happened. They'd won. Not just the hearing, they'd won everything. Gerald was out. The audit was happening. It was over. Aurora grabbed his arm, squeezing hard enough to hurt. Did that just... Yeah, it did. Gerald pushed past them in the hallway, not looking at either of them. His lawyer followed, already on her phone, probably trying to figure out damage control. Khan shook their hands, grinning wider than Ethan had ever seen him. That was a massacre, he said. Mendoza doesn't pull punches. Gerald's finished. What happens now? Aurora asked. The audit happens. Could take months. But given what we already found, I'd bet money they turn up more. Gerald might be facing criminal charges before this is over. And the HOA? You're both homeowners in good standing. The board will need to elect new leadership. And given what just happened, I'd say you two have a pretty good shot at shaping the future of that organization. He packed up his briefcase. Congratulations. You earned this. After Khan left, Ethan and Aurora stood in the courthouse lobby, neither quite able to believe it was real. We should celebrate, Aurora said. Yeah, we should. But neither of them moved. Because underneath the victory was exhaustion, bone deep and overwhelming. They'd been fighting for so long that peace felt foreign. I don't know what to do now, Aurora admitted. I've been in battle mode for weeks. I don't remember what normal feels like. Me either. They looked at each other and started laughing, the kind of laughter that comes from pure relief and exhaustion and the absurdity of everything they'd survived. Come on, Ethan said. Let's get out of here. They drove back to Riverside Estates in separate cars, and when Ethan pulled into his driveway, he saw something that stopped him cold. His lawn had been mowed. The debris from the storm was cleared, and sitting on his porch was a casserole dish with a note. Welcome to the neighborhood. Finally, Patricia Chen. He picked up the dish, feeling something tighten in his chest. For years, he'd lived in this neighborhood without really being part of it. He'd kept his head down, followed the rules, tried not to make waves, and it had left him isolated. But fighting back, standing up to Gerald, helping Aurora, refusing to back down, that had changed something, not just with the HOA, but with the community itself. Aurora came over carrying her own casserole dish. Got one too, from the Millers, and a bottle of wine from the Caldwells. Think they're celebrating Gerald's downfall? Or celebrating that they don't have to be afraid anymore? She set down the dish. That's what it was, the whole time. People weren't loyal to Gerald, they were afraid of him. and we proved he could be beaten. Ethan thought about that, about fear and control and the way people shrink themselves to avoid conflict. He'd been doing it his whole life, playing it safe, keeping control, making sure nothing went wrong. And it had cost him. His marriage fell apart because he couldn't let go. His business struggled because he was too afraid to take risks. He'd been so focused on preventing disaster that he'd forgotten how to actually live. "I don't want to go back to the way things were," he said. Aurora looked at him. "What do you mean?" "Before all this, when I was just existing, going through the motions, I don't want that anymore." "What do you want?" It was the question, wasn't it? The one Ethan had been avoiding for 2 years because answering it meant admitting he wanted more than what he had, meant taking risks, meant giving up control. "I want to build something," he said slowly. "Not just a business, a life. Something that matters. Something that's not just about surviving." "With me?" He met her eyes. "Yeah, with you. If you want that." Aurora was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I've spent my entire adult life running. From foster care, from poverty, from anywhere that felt temporary. I thought money would fix it, that if I had enough resources, I could build stability. But it doesn't work that way. Stability isn't about money. It's about people, about finding somewhere you belong." She stepped closer. "I think I belong here, with you, if you'll have me." Ethan kissed her, slow and deliberate and full of promise. When they broke apart, Aurora was smiling. "So what now?" she asked. "Now we figure it out, together." The next few weeks were chaotic in the best possible way. The HOA held elections. Patricia Chen was voted in as interim president, with Aurora and 2 other homeowners forming a new board. Their first act was to review and overturn half of Gerald's policies, returning the neighborhood to something resembling sanity. The forensic audit uncovered exactly what Aurora had suspected: years of financial mismanagement and self-dealing. Gerald's contracting company had been systematically overcharging the HOA, pocketing the difference. The total came to over $200,000. Criminal charges were filed. Gerald hired a team of lawyers, but the evidence was overwhelming. Ethan's business exploded. The clients Aurora had connected him with started paying off. Referrals led to more referrals. And suddenly he was booked 6 months out. He hired 2 employees to help with the workload. For the first time in years, money stopped being a constant source of stress. Aurora finished fixing up her house. The fallen oak became lumber for new garden beds. She insisted on keeping it, turning destruction into something productive. Her vegetable garden flourished. She still played loud music in the mornings, but now the neighbors just smiled and turned up their own radios. Monica called one evening while Ethan was helping Mia with homework. "I heard you're dating the neighbor," she said without preamble. News travels fast. Mia mentioned it, said you seem happy. Ethan glanced at his daughter, who was very deliberately not listening. "Yeah, I am." "Good. You deserve it." Monica paused. "I was worried, when all that HOA stuff was happening. Thought you were self-destructing. I thought so too sometimes. But you weren't. You were just finally standing up for yourself." Another pause. "I'm sorry I didn't do that. Stand up for us, I mean. For our marriage. I ran instead." It was the closest Monica had ever come to apologizing. Ethan didn't know what to say. "We both made mistakes," he said finally, "but we got Mia out of it, and she's pretty great." "Yeah, she is." Monica cleared her throat. "Anyway, just wanted to say I'm glad you're happy, and tell Aurora I said thanks." "For what?" "For not giving up on you." After she hung up, Mia looked up from her homework. "Mom's being nice. That's weird." "Yeah, it is." "Do you still love her?" The question caught Ethan off guard. "I'll always care about your mom, but no, I don't love her, not the way I did." "Do you love Aurora?" Ethan thought about that, about what love meant. It wasn't the desperate, all-consuming thing he'd felt for Monica when they were young. It was steadier, deeper, built on trust and partnership and choosing each other every day. "Yeah," he said. "I think I do." Mia smiled. "Good. She's way better than Mom." "Don't say that." "Why not? It's true." Ethan couldn't exactly argue with that. 3 months after the hearing, Gerald took a plea deal. 5 years probation, full restitution to the HOA, and a permanent ban from serving on any homeowner board. It was over. Really, truly over. Ethan and Aurora celebrated with takeout Chinese and beer on her back porch, watching the sun set over the neighborhood they'd fought so hard to keep. "Think he'll actually change?" Aurora asked. "Gerald, I mean. Learn something from this." "Probably not. Some people double down when they're wrong. Can't admit they screwed up." "That's depressing. It's human. We all do it sometimes. The trick is recognizing it before it destroys you." Aurora was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I almost let this place destroy me. The fighting, the stress. There were days I wanted to give up, just sell the house and walk away." "What stopped you?" "You, mostly. You kept showing up, kept fighting even when it was stupid to fight. Made me think maybe it was worth it." "It was. Is." Ethan took her hand. "I'm glad you stayed." "Me too." They sat there as darkness fell, and Ethan thought about everything that had led to this moment. The anger and fear and exhaustion, the risks they'd taken, the way they'd both had to let go of control and trust each other. It hadn't been smooth. Hell, it had been a disaster more often than not, but disasters had a way of revealing what mattered. And what mattered was this: two broken people finding something whole in each other. A daughter who was learning that fighting for what's right was worth the cost. A community that was slowly remembering how to trust itself. "I've been thinking," Aurora said, "about the future." "Yeah?" "What if we combined our resources? You expand your business, I invest in it. We build something together, not just our relationship, an actual company. Landscape architecture meets property development. We could design entire communities, make them better than places like this." Ethan turned to look at her. "You're serious? Why not? We work well together. We've got complementary skills, and I'm tired of just flipping properties. I want to build something that lasts." It was terrifying and exciting in equal measure. Everything Ethan had been doing for years had been small, safe, controlled. This was the opposite of all that. "Okay," he said. "Okay? Yeah, let's do it." Aurora grinned, fierce and bright and completely unstoppable. "You're not going to overthink this? Do a risk analysis, make a pros and cons list? Oh, I'll probably do all that." But the answer's still yes. She kissed him, and Ethan felt something settle into place, a sense that he was exactly where he was supposed to be, that all the chaos and fighting and fear had been leading to this. Not to perfection, but to something real. 6 months later, they stood in front of the HOA at a community meeting, but this time as partners presenting a proposal. A redesign of the neighborhood's common areas. Native plantings, sustainable drainage, community gardens. Projects that would actually serve the residents instead of just maintaining appearances. Patricia Chen listened to the whole presentation, asked pointed questions about costs and timelines, then looked around at the other board members. "I think it's brilliant," she said, "and long overdue. Let's put it to a vote." It passed unanimously. After the meeting, neighbors came up to thank them. Some apologized for not speaking up sooner during the conflict with Gerald. Others just wanted to say they were glad things had changed. Dennis Pritchard, the retired accountant who'd laughed in Ethan's face during the petition drive, approached looking uncomfortable. "I owe you an apology," he said. "Both of you. I was wrong. About Gerald, about the HOA, about, well, everything. You did what needed doing, and I was too much of a coward to help." "Water under the bridge," Ethan said. "No, it's not. But I appreciate you saying it." Pritchard held out his hand. "If you ever need anything, signatures, support, whatever, you've got it." They shook hands, and Ethan realized that was the real victory. Not defeating Gerald or winning the hearing or fixing the neighborhood. It was this: people finding their courage again. Remembering that communities worked when people actually gave a damn. That night, Ethan lay in bed with Aurora curled against him, listening to her breathe. Mia was asleep down the hall. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Ethan wasn't planning 3 steps ahead, wasn't trying to control every variable. He was just here, present, content. "You awake?" Aurora murmured. Yeah. What are you thinking about? How different everything is. How scared I was when you moved in. How sure I was that you were going to ruin my carefully ordered life. She laughed softly. Did I? Completely. You're welcome. I am, genuinely. He pulled her closer. You taught me something I'd forgotten. That control isn't safety. That playing it safe isn't really living. That sometimes the best thing you can do is let go and trust the chaos. That's very philosophical for midnight. I'm a philosopher now. Didn't you know? News to me. They lay there in comfortable silence, and Ethan thought about the journey they'd taken. From antagonists to allies to partners to whatever they were now, something deeper than labels could capture. Life wasn't perfect. His business still had tough weeks. Aurora still played music too loud sometimes. Mia still tested boundaries. The HOA still had disagreements. But those were normal problems, human problems, not the soul-crushing weight of fear and isolation he'd been carrying before. I love you, he said into the darkness. Aurora was quiet for a moment. Then, I know I love you too. When did you know? The storm, when you jumped in front of that branch, when you climbed a dying tree in hurricane winds because it was the right thing to do. She shifted to look at him. That's when I knew you weren't just helping me, you were choosing me, even when it was stupid, even when it put you at risk. That's everything. It was pretty stupid. The stupidest and the bravest. She kissed him. Don't ever change, Cole. What if I want to change, grow, become better? Then change, grow, but keep the part that jumps in front of branches for people you care about. Keep being the guy who fights for what matters. Deal. A year later, their company, Vale Coal Design, had completed 3 major projects and had a waiting list of clients. Aurora's investment money and Ethan's design expertise proved to be exactly the combination they'd hoped for. They weren't just doing landscapes anymore. They were reimagining community spaces, turning sterile HOA neighborhoods into actual communities. Mia turned 10 and started asking impossible questions about life and fairness and why people had to be so complicated. Ethan did his best to answer, but mostly he just told her the truth. That life was messy and people were flawed and the only thing you could do was show up and try. That's not very inspiring, she said after one such conversation. Maybe not, but it's honest. Is that what you did? With Aurora and the HOA, just show up and try? Pretty much. And it worked? Eventually, after a lot of failing and fighting and almost giving up. Ethan looked at his daughter. The thing is, Mia, success isn't about being perfect. It's about being persistent, about caring enough to keep trying even when things get hard. That's the real lesson. Did you learn that from Grandpa? Some of it. The rest I learned from Aurora. And from you. From me? You never give up. On your homework, on making friends, on trying to get me to let you stay up late. You just keep pushing. That's brave. Mia considered that. So being stubborn is actually a good thing? When you're stubborn about the right things? Yeah, it is. She smiled, gap-toothed and bright, and Ethan felt pride and love and fear all mixed together. Fear that he'd screw this up somehow, that he'd fail her the way he felt his parents had failed him by not teaching him how to take risks. But then he remembered that failure was part of the process, that mistakes were how people learned, and that showing up imperfect was better than not showing up at all. Aurora moved in officially 6 months after the hearing. They didn't make a big production of it, just gradually her stuff migrated from her house to his, until one day Ethan realized all her clothes were in his closet and her terrible coffee maker was on his counter. Are we living together? He asked one morning. Looks like it. When did that happen? Gradually, then suddenly. She poured them both coffee. That okay with you? Yeah, it is. Her house became a rental property, additional income stream, and a hedge against uncertainty. They kept her terrible couch, though, moving it to Ethan's house over Aurora's objections. It's hideous, she protested. It's where we sat when we planned our attack on Gerald. It's historic. It's ugly. Historic and ugly. Now drink your terrible coffee and stop complaining. She threw a dish towel at him. The neighborhood kept evolving. The new HOA board implemented reasonable policies that actually served residents. Common areas got upgraded. The fear that had permeated everything under Gerald's rule slowly dissipated. Some of Gerald's supporters moved away. Others stayed and adapted. Life went on. Patricia Chen became a close friend, the kind of person who showed up with casseroles when things got tough and called Ethan out when he was being stupid. She and Aurora developed an unlikely friendship built on shared stubbornness and a mutual appreciation for good wine. "You two are exactly what this place needed," Patricia said one evening at a neighborhood barbecue. "A couple of troublemakers willing to shake things up." "We're not troublemakers," Aurora protested. "You absolutely are, and thank whatever powers that be for that." Patricia raised her glass. "To troublemakers. May we always have a few around to keep things honest." They drank to that. As summer turned to fall, turned to winter, Ethan found himself thinking less about what could go wrong and more about what was going right. The business was thriving. His relationship with Aurora was solid, not perfect, but real and resilient. Mia was happy. The neighborhood was healthy. It wasn't the life he'd planned. When Monica left, when he'd found himself alone with a 6-year-old and a mortgage and crushing fear, he'd imagined survival would be enough. Keep his head down. Don't make waves. Protect what little he had. But survival wasn't living, and protection wasn't safety. It was just another form of prison. Real safety came from connection, from taking risks on people worth the gamble, from building something together instead of defending something alone. On Christmas Eve, with snow falling outside and Mia asleep upstairs and Aurora next to him on their historic ugly couch, Ethan realized he'd never been happier. Not because everything was perfect, far from it, but because it was real. "What are you smiling about?" Aurora asked. "Just thinking." "About?" "About how terrified I was when you moved in. How sure I was that you were going to ruin everything. And I was right. You ruined my perfectly ordered, carefully controlled, absolutely miserable life." He kissed her. "Best thing that ever happened to me. Took you long enough to figure it out." "Yeah, well, I'm a slow learner." "Lucky for you. I'm patient." "You're really not." She laughed. "Okay, no, I'm not. But I'm persistent. That counts for something. It counts for everything." They sat there as snow accumulated outside, and Ethan thought about the journey they'd taken, from enemies to allies to partners to family. It hadn't been smooth, it hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. Because the truth, the thing Ethan had finally learned after 32 years of trying to control everything, was that life wasn't about avoiding chaos. It was about finding someone worth weathering the storm with, about building something together that could withstand whatever came next. And what came next would be uncertain, unpredictable, maybe even scary. But they'd face it together, imperfect, stubborn, and absolutely refusing to give up, just like they'd faced everything else. Outside, the neighborhood settled into peaceful darkness. Inside, Ethan held Aurora close and felt something he'd been missing for years finally click into place. Not control, not safety, not certainty, just home.